I'm Ariana. Nice to meet you.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you. So I read the story is kind of based on your life. How so?
Yeah, not so much like my story's not necessarily Kadir, but I just, it's very close to me of being a young artist from the Bronx. I'm an orphan, so I know what it's like to run away and feel alone. So those were the kind of things that inspired like the inspired story of my life versus like I never robbed anyone, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you shouldn't admit it because this is
Oh,
your
correct,
Yeah,
correct,
yes.
exactly.
So this was originally a short film. How did you go about approaching it to be feature length?
Sure. That was actually a really serendipitous thing. And like it's these little moments in your life, especially when you're an artist, that like kind of remind you that you're on the right path. So, I made this short film and really wanted to turn it into a play. And the Sundance Institute reached out to me, which is one of the most prestigious institutes in the world. And all of my contemporaries, like that was their ultimate goal, was to get into these labs. So when they reached out to me and said, "Hey, we saw your short. We think this would be a really compelling feature film. We've closed applications for our lab, but we'll give you a code. And if you could send us a script in 2 weeks, we'll consider the script." And I remember I cried in that moment because I was like, man, I'm not prepared for like my moment in life. I was shooting at the time, I was shooting a Starbucks commercial. It was like a multi-million-dollar campaign. And I had to, just choose to like do this commercial work. And I replied to Sundance like, there's no way that I could write a script in 2 weeks. I've never written anything more than 10 pages. And they were so supportive of me in this story that they replied and said, we'll fast track you to the final round, which will give you 5 weeks. But your first draft will be up against everyone's fourth draft. So, it'll be really hard, but if you want to take the challenge, here's the code. And I quit that Starbucks job the very next day and started writing this story. So it was kind of like a combination of personal experience and then just like sometimes your moment meeting opportunity and being forced to do it.
Well, as a creative myself, um, what does it feel like to actually bet on yourself? And it's based loosely on your life. What is it like to bet on yourself and commit to this while kind of veering off a traditional path?
Sure. I mean, it was definitely a lot of lonely, scary days. I think being an artist, being an entrepreneur, just being independent within itself is a hunter-gatherer mentality. So I have to wake up every morning and hunt for my food. Um, and I mean, look, there's really difficult times, but I think, what really builds confidence in yourself as an artist is betting in yourself, is going through some of the hardest crossroads of your life in a room by yourself and having kind of worked through it. And it's those moments that really shape us as adults, as artists, as just collaborators with other people. So even though the process was, I mean, this was by far the hardest thing I've ever done, I also learned the most about myself and who I was as an artist and who I was as a person. So very, very appreciative and grateful.
Yes. Two themes in the movie that I've noticed, other than obviously graffiti, is swimming and like the idea of wabi-sabi. Why did you decide to have those two central themes, and what do they kind of mean to you in the movie and in life in general?
Sure. Well, one of my biggest inspirations is Akira Kurosawa, a Japanese filmmaker. And, Kurosawa's biggest thing was, utilizing natural elements, so water, wind, fire. These are all things that have like subconscious sensual connections to us as human beings, because they are from nature and we can't really quantify it. So, as a filmmaker, when I'm composing a frame, down to just a single frame, I'm trying to always challenge myself to find ways to incorporate natural elements of movement. So when it came time to think about this internal conflict in Kadir's life, I thought there was something interesting about the juxtaposition of like this cliche that like Black people don't swim, and kind of just fighting that whole narrative. And I think coming of age stories are rich with cliches because that's just how you tell those kind of stories. So while maintaining that story structure, I wanted to find other ways to kind of fight what some of those cliches are, and that was one of them. And then in terms of the wabi sabi, I just as an orphan, as someone who's kind of always been the underdog, I just have a huge admiration and respect for, Tarnish, and kind of not being perfect. And I think especially now in the social media era, we all portray our highlights and we never really portray the full scope of what it is to achieve our dreams. So I just love the idea of being able to be happy while also not being perfect. And I just thought that that was an interesting way to kind of talk about that within this film.
Yes, it was really beautiful. So Asante plays Kadir, which is kind of you. What did you see in Asante that it's just like, okay, you can take this very personal story to me, not just because I wrote it, but it's influenced by my own life.
Yeah, well, I had a co-writer, Bonsu Thompson, and we tried to make Kadir really complex and nuanced, and it was less about him doing an impression of me, but more so understanding what it feels like to be alone and what it feels like to have a pain in your stomach that you're meant for something greater, but you just don't know how to get there. And a lot of times, especially when you grow up in inner city communities, some of the most talented people have come out of these communities, but it's the most minimal resources. And I know even for myself, you know, it's just really hard sometimes to start. And that's the hardest step. So what I got from Asante and meeting him is I knew that he had a full scope of appreciation of the emotional arc of the character. He understood what he needed to bring to the table, and honestly, as a phenomenal actor as he is, he was really great in challenging some of the things that were in there, like, why did you write this line, why does Kadir make this choice? And for me, I love, I think so much of my job is being able to articulate my intention. So I love when the actors challenge me like that, because it'll do one or two things. It'll either fortify my initial idea, or it'll force me to reflect and think about it. And Asante was just really poignant and smart with that out the gate.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Congrats on all of this. It all worked out, and I hope to talk to you
Yeah.
about future projects soon.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.